Okay. Hello, Jen here again. Once again, inviting you into my living room / studio space. Welcome to the second of 4 classes in this stress proofing series. So no worries if you're joining live or watching this as a recording and you haven't watched the first class. While I'm sharing the information in a series, layering on from one week to the next, you can still benefit from attending or watching the classes out of order or even just as one-offs. All of these classes will live on my YouTube channel called Movement for Resilience, along with other tools and practices to help you be a little bit more resilient to stress. And I also want to mention that if any of this feels helpful and useful for you, I'd love it if you would share it to any family, friends, loved ones that you feel might benefit from this kind of work. So thank you for sharing. So today, I'm going to talk a little bit about stress and burnout. So just for a moment, what words typically come to mind when you think about the word burnout or associate? What words do you associate with the word burnout? And you can just sort of think about that in your mind, or if you like, feel free to share that in the chat. And in its simplest terms, burnout occurs when the stress we experience exceeds our capacity to cope with that stress. So if you watched last class, I did a little demonstration with a cup and some water. And so when we're thinking about burnout, that would be that place where we've got our cup and that water's sort of pouring in and it's now breached the glass. The water's just sort of pouring out of the glass. So while some of us individuals may have the ability to thrive, at least in the short term, under high stress, eventually chronic stress or long-term stress without any sort of relief, that constant overflowing of water out of the cup, begins to take a toll on even the most resilient people, whether that's physically, emotionally, psychologically, spiritually, all of the above, however you engage with that. It eventually is going to catch up. And everyone has a different capacity to tolerate stress, thanks to both physiological and psychological factors, which are going to be unique to each and every one of us. So this capacity may be further challenged, though, if we experience trauma in our lives, have chronic pain, experience oppression, inequity, toxic relationships, a global pandemic, and whatever other adverse life experiences you can imagine or have experienced. So however the story of our life has played out, stress impacts our body's ability to bounce back and recover from both specific stressors and those longer chronic stressors. So when the body begins to lose the ability to bounce back after stress, that road to burnout is well underway. So all of this to say, we can train ourselves to be more resilient to stress. It takes time, it takes some practice, and it also means trying on new skills and resources to see how they land in our body. It's going to be different for everybody. So that's where we're going to go next. Let's try on today's practice. And just as a reminder, again, if you didn't join in on the first class, for the next hour or so, see if you can give yourself permission to have your own experience in your body, in your own way, regardless of what I say or how I lead you through movement. And in doing so, can that come from a place of curiosity and kindness and non-judgment and without agenda or even a firm outcome? Let's just sort of have a little bit of an experience and an experiment and see how it goes. So picking up from last week, we started off with the 5-point noticing activity, and we'll start our class with that again today. So go ahead and collect your piece of paper, your journal, or whatever note-taking device you use, and so we can document a little bit about what we notice. Before we go there, just a couple of things. This is really just a quick and brief check-in. You just need to jot down a couple of words, a word or a couple of words that come to mind. And if nothing comes to mind or you're not really sure, that's totally fine. No one is grading you. It's all true. And then skip any of the notice points that you don't feel are meaningful places for your attention to be. And again, this is completely optional. So participate as is best for you. And again, we'll repeat this check-in towards the end of class and sort of compare our practice notes. So to begin, let's just wiggle and jiggle the body around a little bit, sort of maybe connecting to that inner snow globe, kind of getting all of that magical snow starting to move around. And maybe you start to stretch out the arms a little bit, overhead, in front of you. Maybe you start to feel a bit of a reach. Come into a twist. You're more than welcome to mirror me, of course, but ask you to sort of ask the body at this moment, what is it that it would like to do? Where does it want to be? Where does it want to linger? Where does it want to go? And then see if you can kind of give it that. Let your body move in the way that actually feels like you're, in a way, listening to it. And another way you could imagine this, if you're it's not connecting with what I've said, is you could embody your inner waking animal. So if you imagine how an animal sort of wakes up, it sort of stretches, it's a lot of unstructured movement, it really doesn't care what anybody thinks or says. And of course, I can't see you and nobody else can see you. So, just have at it. Do you if you can. All right. Feel free to keep moving and expressing yourself if you like. And I'm just going to start to take you through those 5 points of observation. So to begin, just observing the quality of your thoughts, your mental focus, your clarity today. How is your mind? You connect with feeling a bit clear-headed or a little bit foggy, somewhere in that spectrum. And then connecting with your body a little bit closer. What sensations are you most aware of? And sensations might be things like, itchiness, warmth, cold, pressure, tension. And then bringing your awareness to your breath. Where are you experiencing the breath the most clearly in your body at this moment? Maybe at the nose, chest, belly, elsewhere. And in my asking you to notice your breath, just see if you can try not to manage or change it in any way. Just observe it. And then number 4, your emotions. What feelings are you most aware of right now? Some examples of feelings are things like happy, sad, mad, fear, surprise, anger. All of the above, everything else. And then last, your energy. In this moment, do you relate to feeling fatigued, energized, maybe even a bit of both at the same time or something else entirely? Again, it's all true. So with all of that information in hand, let's again go ahead and organize how we are in this moment on a scale of 1 to 10. Again, acknowledging that you are more than a scale, but this is helpful for tracking our progress. So on the one side of things, we're feeling a bit spacey, shut down, disengaged, maybe just aware of some tension in the body, low motivation, low rev, if you're sort of thinking about this like a car, so we're sort of low rev. And then on the 10 side of that spectrum, we're feeling very revved up and maybe with nowhere to go. So a lot of sort of frenetic energy, but kind of can't displace it or discharge it. You're ready for action. Maybe your thoughts feel a bit racy. Maybe you're aware of sort of feeling a little bit irritated or cranky or even like fidgety. And then 5 being that just right spot, your Goldilocks state. So not too low, not too high, but just right. Things, generally speaking, are feeling good in this moment. You feel in control and present. I invite you to share that number in the chat if you like. And then we're just going to start to get ready to move in today's movement practice. I'm going to invite you to move around in whatever space you have access to today. And that includes possibly coming off your mat if you're using a mat. And I also want to encourage you to maybe just notice how it feels if you have a practice that is on a mat when I ask you to maybe come off the mat. Just notice how that feels. And if it feels better to be on the mat today, then stay on the mat. But if it sort of it feels okay to kind of be on and off your mat, do that too. Just notice. So just seeing in the chat, we've got a number 7. So feeling a little energetic. That's cool. Let's see what happens after some movement and some self-regulation practice there. Again, you're more than welcome to keep sharing in that chat if you like. So let's come to a standing position. I'm just going to reorient my room a little bit here so I can practice alongside you. Just taking a moment for us all to reset up our space a little bit. Okay. And as I mentioned before, we may have some guest appearances from my fur babies. I've got a dog and 2 cats. They just get really curious and like to join in, especially when Mummy's up to different things. So I notice I did not put my mat out just yet. So I'm going to just set myself up here. And you can orient yourself in a similar way to me if you like. So you can see that I've got my mat sort of running perpendicular to my screen today as opposed to directly at it. Your choice. So to begin, just want to start to orient and arrive into your space. And we'll just start with a really, really quick orienting activity. It's called noticing and naming. I'm just going to invite you to start to look around your space and just pick out 3 things, 3 objects that you see. Notice them and name them. You can even name them out loud or just in your mind. I'll give you an example. I notice my lights. So just take a moment to do the same thing, just orienting to your space, orienting to the present moment. And then, when you're ready, we're going to attune a little bit more to our body now. And this is where I'm going to invite you to maybe start to explore the area off your mat, if that feels okay, or if you have the room. You don't need a lot of room. So just want you to start to walk around. Just walking around your space. And start to take notice, or a bit more notice, of how your feet are connecting with your floor. If you're on a mat or coming back onto a mat or changing different surfaces, just noticing how the texture changes and feels under your foot or your feet. And noticing pressure and the weight distribution changes. As you can see, I'm also sort of walking sideways and backwards. You don't need to walk generally forward, just walk in any way that feels where you need to be right now. And then we're going to bring that awareness up a little bit more into our ankles. So see if you can split your awareness a little bit between when you land the foot onto the floor, how that relates to movement at your ankle joint. Does it feel different from side to side? Do you feel you have a sense of more connection to one foot and ankle than the other? And then from there, see if you can bring your awareness even higher up now, bringing it to our knee joint. So now I'm asking you to split your awareness between 3 places. See how that works for you. So now, as I transfer my weight between my feet, noticing the action at my ankle. What is my ankle doing? How does it move? And how does that relate to my knee? And at this point, you might notice that you're sort of doing a little bit of a jig or a dance, and that's cool. Just keeping the awareness again from the feet to the ankle to the knees, noticing differences from side to side, noticing differences between when you're transferring weight. And now I'm going to ask you to extend, lengthen your awareness a little bit more up to the hips. So now as you land on your foot, noticing the weight, the movement at the ankle, the knee, and up to the hips. Noticing how, while all connected, they're also moving in different ways. Beautiful. And now when you're ready, just bringing your weight into what foot. Doesn't matter which one, but just bringing a little weight, sort of experiencing first a little bit of balance maybe for you today, to sort of see where the balancing is for you in your body. And you may find it nice to have this back foot as a bit of a kickstand. So I'm just using my back toe here, just really lightly to help my balance. You can also use a wall or a chair. And then when you're ready, sort of keeping your balance as best you can. Just going to ask you to start to move your head, and we're just going to sweep our gaze over to one shoulder, so off to one side, looking at one side of your room. And then sweeping your gaze, again, following the horizon over towards the other side. Looking out and away from the opposite shoulder. And just moving the head in both of these positions. Just noticing how rotation at your neck is feeling. At the same time, trying to manage balance. So 2 tasks at the same time. And then we'll let that go. Come back to that walking around. Noticing differences between one leg and the other leg. If you can track that sensation again, or that work from the foot all the way up to the standing leg hip. Notice anything different. And now we'll bring our weight onto the other side. So stepping into that foot, again, just acclimating to the task of balancing on this one foot. How does that feel? Does it feel different than the other side? And then when you're ready, let's just change the action of our head this time. So now bringing the chin in towards the throat, so finding a bit of length, rounding on the back of the neck. And then we're going to take that nose and draw it up to the ceiling any amount. So just finding a little bit more length in the throat. And then moving between these 2 positions again. Flexing and extending the spine, or the neck part of our spine. Getting some movement here. Noticing how that feels today. Only working in a range that is free of pain or even fear. Beautiful. Let that go, and let's come back to that walking around. Maybe you decide that you feel you want to pick it up a little bit. Not necessary. Just do you. If you feel like you want to make this more expressive, awesome. Otherwise, just come back to that walking. There's lots of information in both places. So coming back to balance on that first leg. Just take a moment, notice how the balance is now. And this time we're going to bring more movement into our spine. We're going to use our gaze to help us. So start to scanning around your room. Maybe just starting with the horizon, going all the way back over one shoulder. So really seeing that you're twisting your spine all the way up to the neck, and then scanning the horizon all the way around the other way while trying to balance. And then from there, you can take that gaze up and back behind you, and then sweeping down, maybe back the other way. And then just taking a few moments to explore your own capacity of movement in your spine and using your gaze to help guide that movement. Try to be as intentional as you can. If you find that the gaze is kind of sweeping and you feel a little bit discombobulated, see if you can slow it down a little bit. Just notice as the gaze moves, how that translates to movement in your spine from the base of your neck all the way down toward the tailbone. Shake that off. Let's go back to a little bit of walking. Maybe aware of some work that is happening in that scanning leg again, just tracking sensation or what might feel like effort in your body or your muscles. And then coming back to that final leg, we'll balance again. Once again, scanning the room with our gaze, maybe playing with a little bit more of that balance challenge. But don't let the balance piece overtake your capacity to also get some movement into your spine by using your gaze. You could even imagine in some ways that you're a piece of seaweed, the bottom of the ocean, and just finding a little bit of a kind of a fluidity about your body while you're practicing. Beautiful, and then we'll let that go. And just coming back to a little bit of a walk around, sort of coming back to the feet, the ankles, your knees, all the way up to your hips. And then you can come back onto your mat if you're choosing to practice on it. And we're gonna start to look at the different joints of our lower body a little bit more. We're gonna prepare them for a later part of our practice. So to begin, we're going to start with some ankle rotations. And I like to have my hips sort of underneath my hip points, or my feet underneath my hip points. So you can just sort of negotiate that with yourself. I'm going to start by lifting up onto one toe. So really high toe, like a Barbie foot. And then from there, I'm going to think about starting to intentionally roll my ankle. So I'm rolling off to the side, coming onto the outer edge of my ankle nice and slowly. Keep weight in the supporting leg as you start to feel how this is in your body to bring your foot into this position. And then we'll land the heel and start to roll through now to the inner edge. So the outer edge of my foot, my baby toe side, is lifting up a little bit. So see if you can do that in your body. And then we'll come back up to the toe. And then outer edge, the heel lands to inner edge, back up to the toe. So finding some rotational capacity of your ankle. And I do want to go back on something I just said. Your ankle rotation will likely not look like my ankle rotation, and that's because it's your body. So I only want you to execute this movement in a range that feels possible in your body, free of pain and free of fear. So only to that extent. So we're going to see if we can reverse that now, going the opposite direction. So coming up onto the high toe again, this time rolling into the inner edge of the foot, the inner knife edge, onto the heel we land, roll the foot, transfer the weight onto the baby toe side, outer edge as we lift up. Just sort of rolling the ankle in that direction. Aware of any sensations you might be feeling at the ankle. Beautiful. And then we'll just sort of pause for a moment. Notice the difference between one foot and the other. And then we'll come on to the other side. So again, lifting up onto the toe as high as you can, rolling the foot out to the outer edge, coming down to the heel, distributing the weight from the pinky to the big toe side, lifting up that outer edge any amount, and then coming back up to that high toe, rolling through. You might be observing some clicking or clacking, cracking, and as long as it's not hurtful or it doesn't, make you feel uncomfortable in any way, just the joints and the tissues sort of articulating and moving, especially if you're not doing this on a daily basis, sort of your ankles saying, hello, I've got all of this stuff going on in here and now I'm moving it around, which is a good thing. Let's try to reverse that now, back to the high toe, this time rolling into the inner edge first, heel, outer edge, and up. You can change the intensity by how much weight you have in your supporting leg. So if you put a little bit more weight into the rotating ankle, you might notice that there's just maybe more sensation there, maybe more effort required, so just be aware of that. And then let's pause. Then when you're ready, we're going to come to our knees. So bringing your feet and your legs as close together as best you can. So sort of hugging up through the legs from the ground all the way up. I'm going to turn this way. And then just coming to notice your head, your shoulders, your pelvis. See if they can all, generally be speaking, sort of be stacked over top of your feet in this vertical space. And then from there, keeping those legs hugging together, starting to bend into the knees any amount. And only bending so far that we keep weight in our heels and that the distribution of weight in our feet is pretty even. So just can come in and out of that a few times. Bending knees, keeping the heels in place. And then the next time you bend the knees, keeping the inner lines of the legs hugging together, just walk your hands down. So we're going to hinge the hips a little bit. So now my torso and head are more in diagonal alignment. Hinging my hips, my hands are going to come down onto my legs, maybe on the top of my legs, maybe on the sides of my legs, whatever feels good for you. And so now keeping everything as is, keeping the arms as straightish as possible. Just go back to straightening those legs. So we're now finding length in the back of the knee and bending into the knees, keeping the feet flat. Just working through this action, really just trying to keep just the action to the knees bending and straightening any amount. Again, whatever's happening in your body, not my body, just bending and straightening, keeping everything hugged in together. So this is hinging our knees. We can do this. Okay, so now let's explore the rotational capacity of our knees. So any amount, and let's go smaller than we think we should to start, especially if we haven't done this before. Let's see what happens if we take our knees, shift them towards one side, one foot side, any amount. Just a little shift, as you can see. I swipe my knees towards my baby toe on the outer edge of one foot. And then I'm going to move them off to the other side. Again, any amount. Okay, so if this is feeling okay, rotation from our knees, we have this capacity. They can do these things. Now let's explore what it might feel like to kind of connect the dots. So coming back to bending into the knee, and then we'll shift those knees over to one side, any amount, and lengthening through the back of the legs, any amount. You might notice that things are a bit tight back there, so only go as far as you can. And then we'll shift to the opposite side, and then come back to knees pointing forward. So see if you can move through those, connecting those dots on your own. You could even try to trace that shape, whatever shape you're imagining in your brain. I'm kind of imagining a round square. So being a bit more fluid with the dot connecting. Noticing if the range changes at all. Notice any sounds that the knees might be making. Again, only working within a range where it is free of pain. And then we'll pause there for a moment. Just stand up. Maybe shake things out. We'll try the other side. So when you're ready, bending into those knees any amount. Heels stay heavy. Arms come down or hands come down the thighs, any amount, wherever they land. Maybe try a different hand position. Notice how that feels for you. I often find a bit more support when I bring my hands to the sides of my thighs, almost like I'm just sort of hugging them in, helping them hug in. And then from there, let's shift the knees any amount, swipe the knees to one side, straighten up through the back of the knees, off to the other side, back to center. And then just moving through those 4 points in your own way. Just notice how it feels on this side. Notice if things are moving freely or feeling stuck. And then even coming into something that maybe feels a bit more like you're stirring your knees over your ankles. Any amount. Beautiful. Let's let that go. Now we'll come up to the hips. So ankles, knees, hips. This one I'm going to suggest going a little bit wider. Whatever feels good for you, where you sort of feel connection to the ground, but you feel like you have some movement of your pelvis, your hips here. So you can even bring your hands to your hips. This will help with the connection. And we'll just start simply by tucking our tailbone under. So our tailbone on the back side here. So we're tucking it under as we scoop the pelvis forward. And then doing the opposite of that. So now sticking the bum out, tipping the hip points forward. So just moving between these two positions. Again, bringing the hands to the hip points or to the sides. Just notice the musculature of your body, bringing your pelvis into these two positions. And then from there, let's bring that into more of a hip hike. So thinking about lifting up one hip a little higher than the other, and then changing that to the other side. So just sort of creating this swaying or sashaying action of your hips, noticing how that feels. Noticing how this movement is communicated right down to the ankles and feet. You notice some connections there. And then we'll start to put this all together in a bit of a circle. You can think about your tailbone, drawing a circle as I'm moving between the 4 points we've explored, making it maybe a little bit more fluid now. You can imagine that you are doing this really slow hip hula action. So you're trying to keep your hula hoop going, but at the same time, trying to keep your connection to this action. So it's really intentional, almost like you're in really thick fog and it's hard to make this action happen in your body. All right, let's try the other way, just coming back to the scooping and the unscooping. Your pelvis is a bowl, so you can almost imagine with this action that it's full of water, and as you are tilting and untilting your pelvis, it's sort of water's pouring forward and back. And then we'll do that from side to side. So now sloshing that water from side to side. And then see if you can remember which way you started. See if you can start to hula in the opposite direction. You might be able to make that connection. If it's the one side that feels a bit more awkward, or there's almost like a glitch with your brain and how to do that. And then bringing in a bit more of a smooth circle if that feels okay. And just going at a speed that, again, imagining to keep that hula hoop going, but at the same time, we've got this really thick air resisting the action. Beautiful. And from there, just walk that off. Maybe on the mat or off the mat, just coming back to your space, returning to noticing the feet as they make contact with the floor. And as the feet make contact with the floor, how does that transmit or connect to action at your ankles? Does that feel any different now? And then spreading that awareness a little bit further up to the knee. So foot, ankle, knee. And then lastly, how that all translates right up to our hips. Again, maybe if you want to bring your hands to your hips, just noticing as you step into one foot and see if you can toggle that awareness from the ankle, connect that up to the knee, all the way up to the hip. Just keep moving around. And when you're ready, just coming back to more of a still position in standing, relative stillness. Things are always moving, but just experiencing a moment of pause. And now I want you to imagine that you're stepping into your armor. So we're going to put on a lower body suit of armor for this next experience. So really plugging your feet down, and we're going to try to keep everything from our hips down to our feet really strong and stable. And not moving. And what we're going to now do is bring some awareness to a very specific part of our spine. So we looked at the neck a little bit earlier today. We moved that. Now we're going to see if we can isolate movement in this sort of midsection of our spine. It's also called the thoracic spine or T-spine. This is often a chunk of our spine that doesn't get a lot of movement. In fact, we're really good at kind of keeping it in one position because of computer habits or driving or sitting. Generally speaking, this doesn't get a lot of attention. So we're going to give it a little attention. And I will say that if this is not a place where you have brought attention, like your brain doesn't know that this part moves, it may feel some frustration or challenge, or it may feel completely impossible. Just notice those things. It's all fine, and with some practice, we can all get there. And outside of if there's an injury or an appliance, of course, in the spine, but a healthy, mobile spine does have the capacity to move in this place. So let's all see what happens. So I find that by bringing my awareness to my sternum, that's that breastbone. To give you just a short, really brief anatomy here. Your rib cage comes into the sternum here, but it also wraps back into connecting to your spine. So if I move my rib cage, or I can think about moving my rib cage, I'm also getting the benefits of moving this part of my spine that I'm looking to move. So let's see. So first things first, again, root down through feet, embrace that armor in your legs and hips. We can bring our hands out to a T shape, or here, or even scoop under our shirt or tank top, sort of like we're holding on to suspenders. And start to think about moving your sternum. Might be helpful to just touch it first time over to one side. So towards one foot, towards one edge of your mat, and then come back through center. And then we'll do the same in the other direction and back through center. So just seeing if you can imagine moving your sternum, or even shifting your rib cage over your hips. Again, when I said sternum, rib cage, spine, by moving our ribs we're also moving this part of our spine. And just notice if we're doing this, that how you can get that feedback if you notice the arms are sort of dipping this way. Not a bad movement of the spine, but not the movement we're looking at right now. So just thinking about translating the spine from side to side. You can embody your inner typewriter here. Beautiful. And then let that go wherever you got. And I'm going to turn this way so you can see our next movement action. So now we're going to see if we can move that part of our spine forward and back. So again, I'm going to bring my hands to my sternum. I find that to be most helpful, especially for this one. It's very challenging for me. My brain has a hard time connecting to this part of my body. So by bringing my hand to my sternum, I find it helpful. So when you're ready, see if you can start to move your fingers forward any amount. So you're thinking about moving your sternum forward any amount, and it's not going to be a lot, just a little. Just sort of see if you can get that sense of in your body. If you notice that this kind of thing is happening, so there's a lot of movement happening, see if again you can reconnect to rooting through the hips down to the feet and keeping the head and neck as still as you can. So just this little amount of movement. And then the next time you come out, any amount, see if you can keep your fingers there. See if you can now draw the sternum back. And if you look down, you might notice it's like a very little amount. Then move the sternum forward to the fingers and then back away. And again, notice if we're rounding here to make that happen, just keeping everything else in place and just moving the sternum forward and back, trying to keep it in an upright position. Oh, so tough. Okay, so you can continue to play with in your body, moving forward, back, side to side, but let's see if we can add on another layer. So root through the feet. I'm going to think about first bringing my sternum forward, any amount, and then I'm going to shift it to one side, and I'm going to send it a little bit back behind me, and then over to the other side. So mapping the 4 points that we have first explored, and then maybe turning this into, you might really need to use your imagination here, almost like you're now doing a hip hula with your rib cage. It's a magical a magical hula hoop here that of course does not fall as long as you are able to keep some sense of that rotation. You can even visualize your rib cage rotating over your pelvis, any amount. Pause. And then when you're ready, let's try to go the other way, see what happens. So again, draw that sternum forward, keeping head and neck still, keeping hips to feet still, then off to the opposite side, sending it back any amount, and then over to the other side. Forward, side, back, side. And then maybe smoothing out the movement between those 4 points. Maybe coming into an action that kind of resembles your rib cage orbiting over your hips. I've got this glitch happening over on this side where my brain's just like, no, I don't really understand what's happening. This feels frustrating, hard, impossible. Congratulations, you're a human. Let that go. Now we're going to come into an even wider stance. So you are going to have to edit your feet, and I'm going to invite you to continue to do that as we move through this next little bit. So for me right now, my toes are pointed towards you and your screen, and the outer edges of my feet are, relatively speaking, in line with my side walls, give or take. So you might have to edit it again. And I've got a little bit of a bend in my knees because that feels good in my body. So when you're ready, let's turn one foot out to point to one of your walls. So just noticing, again, you might need to edit your feet. Having the feet kind of on like a balance beam-ish, so maybe that's heel to heel alignment or even heel to upper arch or to the arch of your foot. And then when you're ready, just starting to bring a bending action into this front knee, the knee of the foot that's turned out, any amount, whatever is happening in your body right now. Feeling that knee again. And then when you're ready, drawing it so it's sort of tracking in line with maybe your second and third toe-ish, moving in that direction towards the wall. Let's bring our arms out to the T. See if we can connect to a little bit of that sternum reaching again. Sternum moving side to side. And the next time that sternum is more towards that bent knee, bringing that hand to the thigh, wherever it lands. Then we'll take that free arm and we'll lift it up and overhead. So here, thinking about creating a nice long line from our upper wrist that's framing our head to the armpit, to the hip, down to the foot behind us, reaching that arm up, pressing through the foot in the back foot, and even finding a bit of lightness here with this hand. We could even come down onto that forearm. But again, see if you can find that nice long reach between the armpit and top hip, wherever you are. And then maybe finally finding a little bit of rotation, thinking about turning that sternum up towards the ceiling, any amount. We'll just pause here for a moment. Maybe you're able to come back to tracking your breathing, noticing how it feels to take a breath or two in this shape. And then when you're ready, when I think about pressing through the front leg, you can use your hand as well, pressing that leg straight, sweeping that arm, top arm down, turning that toe back to face forward. And we'll just pause here for a moment, hands at the heart center, be one on the other. Just taking a moment to observe our body after that shape we were in. Noticing sensations. Maybe noticing contact points of your hands and feet. Or maybe aware of heartbeat. Have a sense of your breath. Let's take a snapshot. And then when you're ready to move again, we'll explore our side ankle pose on the other side. So we'll turn out the opposite foot this time. And you may need to readjust your feet. I didn't mention this on the other side, but if you notice that there's a bit of this back knee from this trailing leg feels a bit niggly or wonky or doesn't feel good, you might just need to edit the placement of your toes. So you may not benefit from having that outer edge of your foot in line with your wall. You might need to turn the toes in a little bit or out a little bit. Just, make that adjustment so that that feels good in your body. Again, just bending into that front knee, any amount. And then when you're ready, coming into knee bend, feeling the equal weight of your feet pressing into the ground, pressing through the front heel or the bent knee heel, pressing out through the outer edge of the back foot. We'll bring our hands back to that T position, starting to move that rib cage from side to side. And then the next time you come to that place where the leading armpit is a little bit closer to your knee, dropping that hand to meet the leg, any amount, or onto your forearm. And then we'll lift that other arm up and overhead, framing the top side of our face. We could look up at our elbow or arm, or keep it straight forward on the screen. Just pausing here and seeing if you can create a little bit more length about yourself from the top, wrist, armpit, hip, out through the outer edge of the back foot. Pressing the ground away as you think about creating a sense of lift, reach, and then maybe even adding in a bit of that rotation. Opening up the chest a little bit towards your ceiling. Any amount. Just pause there again for a few breaths or a few counts. And then when you're ready, let's press the ground away to come out of this pose. Turn that foot in, arm sweeps down. This time we're just going to heel toe everything back to a center place. Just take a moment to pause. At this point, just sort of noticing the effects of your practice so far as it sort of comes up and washes through your body, your mind, your physical body, the energetic quality that you might be connected with right now. And if your mat is oriented like mine, when you're ready, let's just come to stand on one end. So this is now the sort of back of my mat if I'm oriented that way. But if you are doing near a knee, we're going to come to one end. And we're going to begin by shifting the weight from foot to foot to start. And then we're going to bring more weight into the foot closest to your screen, closest to me, closest to the digital me, I should say. So pour the weight into that one leg, and then we're going to start to lift and bring this other foot up, a little bit of floating. So back to balancing, and then we'll extend that leg furthest away from your screen, and we'll kick it out, and then we'll slowly and with lots of intention start to bring that heel down to the mat. And I just want you to pause. You notice there's a sort of sense of urgency to go any further than that. Just notice that. See if you can kind of hold back a little. Slow this down. And then when you're ready, let's start to transition our weight from the back foot to the forefoot, to the front foot. So heel gets a bit heavier, moving through the midfoot to the forefoot, toes land. And as toes land on front foot, coming up onto the toes of the back foot, pause. And then we'll step that foot through. And again, really slowly, mindfully, this walk to the other side of our mat, transferring weight again from the back foot to the front foot, noticing any shaking or wobbling. And then one more step through as we transfer that weight. And then this time I'm going to step back just a little bit on my own mat, just starting to bring the weight into that standing leg, now furthest away from your screen. And so we're going to draw that other leg through, bringing your attention to your knee. Just start to draw little shapes, circles, squares, maybe little letters of the alphabet with your knee. And then from there, maybe start to make those shapes a little bit bigger. And as you're moving the knee, noticing the action that's happening at the hip. And then maybe you want to create a little bit more movement. So what might have felt like very two-dimensional shapes turned into something more 3D, really moving that knee in a lot more different places, which is going to create movement in this hip, also in the standing leg. And then you can maybe imagine that the sort of gust of wind comes into your space and starts to add a layer of challenge to this activity. That wind is yours to moderate, whether it is just sort of adding gusts or gets sort of really tornado-like. Just seeing if you can challenge your balance, and coming out and coming back in is just as important as trying to hold the balance, but just imagine you've got all this wind, all this chaos coming at you. You can use your hands, if you're watching me, as a way to help negotiate that, or even add a little bit of chaos. Just a few more moments wherever you are. Again, do you, don't do me. And then when you're ready, we're just going to draw all of that chaos into some stillness. I'm going to turn this way so you can see me. I'm going to come into a shape called tree. And so you can bring your toes to the floor and your heel to connect with your leg, or bring that bent knee up higher. Wherever you feel like exploring your tree today, bringing our hands together. Again, maybe one over each other over the heart. And we're just going to pause here. And again, if it's available, maybe tracking some internal sensations like your breathing. And you can also bring your attention back to the contact points between your hands. Or even notice the contact of your feet with each other or on the floor. Now when you're ready, allowing it all to sort of just move on. Now we're on the opposite side of our mat. And if we're not on the opposite side of our mat, come to the opposite side of your mat. It's all good. So, repeating on the other side. This time, I'm going to pour my weight into the leg closest to you. So my digital leg closest to your screen. Sort of pour that weight in. Maybe experiment a little bit with balance. Notice how that is at this point in our practice. And then when you're ready, let's kick that leg through, landing on the heel. We know where this is going, so try not to anticipate it. Try to treat this like a whole new experience. We start to find a little bit more weight in the heel, more weight in the foot, more weight on the toes. Leg lands, we come up onto the back toes, and again we step through, and we again roll through. See if you can evenly transfer the weight. So as you're lifting up a little bit from the back leg, you're at the same equal amounts pouring more weight into the front leg. You can even just rock a little bit there. Cola's here to say hello. And then we'll take one final step forward. See if you can make this the most intentional, the most slow and steady. Pouring weight now into that leading leg. And then we'll draw that free leg through. Again, starting with those little discoveries as our knee creates little shapes, maybe even letters. And then maybe making those a little bit bigger. And then maybe making those a bit more three-dimensional. And as that knee is drawing those shapes, letters, noticing the action that creates at this free hip. Also notice what's going on in that standing leg hip. One leg hip is being your stability. Your other hip is being a little bit less stability, more mobile. And then again, maybe imagine that things get a little bit more tornado-ish. Oof. And start to explore in whatever way feels best for you, where it's now more free movement, more on structure. The only task is to keep that standing leg foot balanced, or planted, and then just challenge your balance. In any way. Come out of it at any point, return to it at any point. Woo! And then when you're ready, we will again sort of storm moves on. coming back to our tree position. Maybe you explore a different variation this time. Maybe not. It's coming to a place where you can still feel like you're maintaining a sense of balance, but at the same time, engaging with a sense of stillness. Again, coming back to the breath. Or coming to the contact points of your hands, of your feet. Maybe even aware of a bit of a sway-like quality to this position. Just a few more moments, a few more breaths. When you're ready to come out of the position, come out of the position. You might need to just take a moment to sort of come back to your space, look around again. If you feel like you're sort of went away, just to orient to come back. And then I'm going to invite all of us to the final part of our movement practice. I'm noticing we have gone long today, and I'm going to continue probably for another 20 minutes or so, but if you have about 5 minutes to wrap up the movement part of the practice, you can always come back to watch the recording of the last part. But you can come back to a seat or remain in standing for this next little bit. I'm going to guide you through 3 self-regulation practices now that you can really do anywhere or at any time. Each will explore touch and the potential soothing effects it can have on your ability to ground and calm yourself during or after stressful situations. So soothing touch has the benefit of releasing a hormone called oxytocin. This is sometimes called the connection hormone, or I've also heard the cuddle hormone, the love hormone. And this is because it is released when people are snuggling or bonding socially. It's actually something that our dogs, our pets, release when we're stroking and petting them. So given our current COVID situation, snuggling and bonding socially may not be possible for many of us. And in fact, it could prove quite dangerous. But we can still find the benefit of oxytocin when we're the ones, doing the soothing touch. Your body doesn't associate that it is you doing the snuggling or loving. Oxytocin will still be released, even if your brain is giving me a skeptical look right now. Even though this thing up here is telling one story, there is in fact a neurochemical response happening in your body when you can offer yourself kind and gentle touch. So let's give it a try. Let's try it on and see how it lands in your body today. So we're going to spend about 30 seconds with each practice. And there's 3 of them again. The first one, just take a moment to find your seat or your standing position. We're going to do an arm sweep. So we're just going to bring our hands, I'm actually going to bring my light down a little bit. So bringing our hands to our shoulders and just start to sweep from the shoulders down to your elbows. Just intentional, but gentle. You might imagine that you are smoothing out the wrinkles in your shirt, or even smoothing lotion out on your skin. And as you are gently and intentionally stroking from shoulders to elbows, maybe aware of the contours of your body here, maybe even aware of the sound the friction makes of your hand in connection with your arm or shirt. Just a few more moments here. Pause. We'll now move into the second, which it may look a little bit like, feel a little bit like hand washing. So you could imagine that you are washing your hands, however that shows up for you right now. Just seeing the movement of your hands, feeling the surfaces as the hands move over each other, aware of different contours. And then again, maybe even hearing your hands as they glide over one another. What does that friction sound like? Just a few more moments. And again, we'll just pause for a moment. And for this last one, I'm going to be touching my face, so I'm going to take off my eyeglasses. You might like to do the same thing. So this is going to look like bringing our fingerprints to sort of guide yourself over the top part of your eye socket. So you could even just feel that if you're not sure. So just finding that sort of part of your skull above your eye. Maybe that is something that is framed with your eyebrows, maybe not, but just sort of sweeping from the midline out towards the outer edge of the eye. And then doing the same thing from the underside now. Again, just sort of locating where that lower part of your eye socket is and just sweeping from there out to the outer edge of the eye. Just repeating this. If you've ever worn goggles or seen a person that's had goggles on for some time, you tend to get those goggle imprints. You just can imagine that you're smoothing out those imprints. And again, just noticing how it feels to connect with yourself in this way. Just a few more moments. And then when you're ready, just letting that go. And put my glasses on. So returning back to our check-in where we first started, just maybe take a moment to kind of jiggle a little bit. Take a few breaths if that feels available for you. And then we'll start again with checking in on our mind, noticing any shifts in the quality of your thoughts, your focus, clarity at this point in the practice. And then your body. What sensations are you most aware of now? Changes in temperature, changes in other sensations. Maybe you noticed something before that you don't notice now. Just observe that. Now your breath. Where are you now experiencing the breath the most clearly in your body? If you weren't able to track it earlier, has anything shifted there for you? Your emotions, what feelings are you most aware of now? And last point, the energy. How does your energy feel? Any shifts, any changes? Remember, it's all true, even if you didn't notice anything or observed no shifts. And then if you haven't already started to, let's look at sort of that scale again, noticing where you are in this present moment. Do you feel more connected to a 1, spacey, shut down, low rev, low motivation, or more connected to a 10, revved up, ready to go, cranky, all of those things, high energy, nowhere to go, or maybe closer to that 5. And once again, you're more than welcome to share in the chat if you like. So for our self-regulation tool this week, I'm going to invite you again to choose one or more of the tools or practices that we explored today, and try to practice them each day. Now, last week I suggested trying to carve out at least 5 minutes a day for your practice. Just want to unpack that a little bit more here. 1 minute counts. So even in a minute, you can start to get a sense of where you are, even just doing that really quick 5-point noticing activity. And if you are observing that your state is one way or the other, or your feelings are associated to different thoughts and emotions, we can really observe that quality about ourselves in even just a minute. So it's sometimes even just helpful to take that pause in little moments throughout your day. So maybe it's not a 5-minute practice, but maybe it's 5 1-minute practices that happen throughout your day, whether it's, something as simple as padding we've done, or even choosing one of the self-touch activities. Even if we're looking at the little bit of chaotic balance, we did a lot of balance today. Just even standing on one leg, closing the eyes is really going to bring your attention back really quickly. If you sort of are noticing that, you're kind of having a lot of trouble staying present, staying focused. And it's when we can be present, when we can give ourselves some space and pause, that we're going to be able to know what it is that we need, and further be able to take care of the people around us. So spend the last little bit now with some journaling time. If you are someone who has sort of a journal practice and you want to sort of go off and do your journal thing, you do you. Anyone else who wants to journal, I'm going to offer a few prompts, and you can just sort of go with that. So we'll spend about, a few minutes here. You can always come back to it. You can always continue after our class today. So if you're journaling, go journal. Here are the 3 prompts. So the first one is to observe or notice any shifts in the 5 points of observation today. And if you have that information from last class, maybe comparing those notes. Our next prompt: did any of the movements or activities in today's practice feel beneficial or soothing, or brought about a sense of ease or comfort in your body? It just felt really good, or they maybe felt challenging in the process of doing them, but after the fact, you noticed benefit, soothing, ease, calm. So just any of those movements from today's class, do you connect with any of those in this way? And then sort of a trailer to that one, just keeping in mind that 1 minute counts. What intention could you set for yourself this week to carve out some practice time just for you? Just another minute or so. Okay, so when you're ready to close out our class today, I invite you to return to one of the 3 self-regulation practices that we explored with touch. If there was one that sort of felt really good and beneficial for you, or you can just find a seated spot or any other position or movement that feels good for you. And we're going to practice any of these techniques in combination with closing out today's class with our mantra. If this is the first time you're here, a mantra is, or you're not sure what that word means, it's just a slogan to help empower and embody the experiences we're having. So the mantra for our class is, I am strong, I am capable, I am resilient. So we're going to repeat this mantra together. And you can say it out loud with me or repeat it silently in your own mind. And we're going to go for 3 rounds. So when you're ready, you can begin to go back to an activity, whether it was a self-soothing touch activity that we did today or something else. And I will start our mantra now. I am strong. I am capable. I am resilient. I am strong. I am capable. I am resilient. I am strong. I am capable. I am resilient. Thank you for joining me today. Cola says thanks too. She's been very vocal. Again, this class will be added to my YouTube channel called Movement for Resilience. Feel free to reach out by email if you have any questions or would like to know more about a certain topic relating to stress. I will certainly do my best to unpack it in a future class. And I hope you found this class helpful, and we'll take elements of it into your everyday life. And again, if you know anyone that you feel might benefit from some of this stuff, please by all means share it with them. And until next time, take care of yourselves, take care of each other. Be well, my friends.